Hello, good morning. I hope that we are all fine and you're doing okay. I hope that you're all keeping safe at home because the situation that we're living in, COVID. Remember to keep safe because we really need all of you very much alive. Okay, so today, welcome to our lesson of this topic known as tissue respiration by me, your usual teacher. So to begin with, what is respiration, or what do you understand by this word or this term respiration? So respiration is simply a process by which simple foods are broken down in body cells, liberating energy. Simple foods broken down in body cells, liberating energy. Meaning that the major product of respiration is energy, which energy is needed and used by the body. We've also noted, or we are seeing, that it is basically breakdown of simple foods. They are complex foods that we do take in our bodies. But the complex foods get broken down into simple foods, which the body can now utilize and use for respiration. Generally, we say that the foods which are broken down in respiration are what we call respiratory substrates. But now the respiratory substrates in the body, they can either be proteins, carbohydrates can be broken down, or fats can be broken down. But the main ones are the carbohydrates. However, the body breaks down fats as well, and in absence of fats and carbohydrates, then proteins can as well be broken down. Because it occurs within the body cells, that is why we refer to it as cellular respiration. And energy being the product, we know that energy in our bodies is liberated and stored in form of adenosine triphosphate. Therefore, energy being a product, that means that we end up forming ATP within the body. But why does the body need energy? Anyway, why does the body manufacture energy? Why does respiration take place? So this brings us to the necessity for the energy. In other words, what does the body use this energy for? 1. Energy is needed for synthesis of protoplasm within the cell. When we talk of protoplasm is simply that material comprising the living part of a cell. It is the material comprising the living part of the cell, including the cytoplasm, including the nucleus, and other cell organelles. It is the living component or part of a cell, including the nucleus, the mitochondrion, all those other organelles, together with cytoplasm, are what we are referring to as protoplasm. So because protoplasm is manufactured in a cell, that process requires the use of energy. Secondly, energy is needed for movement of the organism. Organisms keep moving from one place to another for different reasons, like we shall see in that topic of locomotion. Therefore, movement from one place to another is what we call locomotion. That is why when you fall very sick and you really feel weak, you don't have any energy in your body, you may even fail to locomote. Therefore, locomotion, for it to occur, energy is necessary. We're also saying it is needed for movement. Movement refers to displacement of a body part of an organism. When I transfer part of my body from one place to another, then movement has taken place. Therefore, energy is needed for movement of the organism from one place to another, a process we are referring to as locomotion. Energy is also needed for heat production. Most energy is liberated by the body in form of heat, which heat is needed to regulate temperature. This applies mainly to the endothermic organisms, or organisms that maintain a constant body temperature, commonly called the homeothermic organisms. Their temperature does not change with change in environmental temperature. Therefore, that regulation equally requires energy. Energy is also needed for transmission of impulses. Impulses within the nerve cells or within the neurons. Remember, impulses, these are electric, they form the electric messages by which information is carried from one part of the body to another. Again, we shall see that in detail when we come to that process, so that topic of coordination. Energy is also needed for sound production. Within our bodies, within the bodies of organisms, there are parts where sound is produced. Like we could talk of the larynx in humans. That production of sound requires energy. Equally, that is why when people are sick, very sick on bedridden, they may fail to talk because their bodies are lacking energy. Energy is equally needed for muscle contraction. Contraction of muscles brings about movement. They require ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is a form in which energy is stored within the body. So muscle contraction to bring about movement also requires energy. We also have cell division. Remember, in cell division, which occurs in different stages, depending on the stage of the cell or the stage which the cell is undergoing, it equally requires the supply of energy. Therefore, it is needed to form new cells because it is a process by which new cells, known as daughter cells, are formed from the parent cells. That process requires the use of energy. We have light perception. In order for you to see light perception, your eyes, to bring about that perception, you require energy. Salt reabsorption from the glomerular filtrate. I think we've heard of the kidney nephron. There is a part called the loop of Henle with two limbs, the descending limb and the ascending limb. Now in the ascending limb, there is reabsorption of salts by that process known as active transport, which requires the use of energy. Energy is needed for reproduction. In order for organisms to reproduce, they require the use of energy, like we shall see when we come to that topic in detail. Absorption of mineral salts by the plant roots from the soil. Remember, mineral salts are absorbed by diffusion, but they are also absorbed by active transport. So it is that active transport that requires the use of energy in order to absorb the mineral salts, bringing about their uptake from the soil. Plants open and close stomata. Opening and closure of stomata also requires the use of energy. Remember, we looked at the mechanisms of stomata opening and closure. There is one where we talked of the ionic theory, the potassium ions moving into the gut cells. Their inward movement into the gut cells occurs by active transport using energy. When they enter into the gut cells, remember those changes that occur, they increase, they decrease the water potential of the cells. And in so doing, the guard cells now are able to take up much more water, bringing about them becoming turgid, curved, thereby opening the stomata. But the intake occurs by active transport. Therefore, energy important in opening and closure of the stomata. Then root pressure generation, that is in movement of water within the xylem. Remember, when water molecules move from the root cortex cells, they enter into the xylem as a result of root pressure, which plays some role in the upward movement of water up the stem. That root pressure generation also requires energy. Lastly, we also have energy used for translocation. Remember, translocation is the movement of organic substances within the plant. However, energy is needed for loading of the sieve tubes by the transfer cells. Sieve tubes, these are components of the phloem. Therefore, loading of these organic substances requires energy. In summary, we have seen that respiration leads to production of energy, which energy is used by organisms for a variety of functions. It plays big roles in the life of living organisms in order to support life. Moving forward, this brings us to the types of respiration. Remember, respiration is the breakdown of the simple foods in body cells, releasing energy. And we are noting that this occurs in two forms or two types. One, we have what we call aerobic respiration, and two, what we call anaerobic respiration. We begin by looking at aerobic respiration. What is aerobic respiration? It is the breakdown of food to release energy in presence of oxygen. In presence of oxygen. Anaerobic respiration, we shall see that it is the breakdown of food to release energy in absence of oxygen. So it is the complete opposite of aerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration, breakdown of food in absence of oxygen to release energy, while aerobic, breakdown of food in presence of oxygen, releasing energy. However, in aerobic respiration, carbon dioxide and water are also formed. Just like we can see from our equation here, the main respiratory substrate is glucose. Glucose combines with oxygen, or in presence of oxygen, glucose is broken down into carbon dioxide, water, and energy, which energy is in form of ATP. So in addition to energy, we have carbon dioxide and water. That is aerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration, the products differ. In plants, they are different from those in animals. Remember, anaerobic respiration, food is broken down in absence of oxygen, releasing energy. Now in animals, sugars are broken down, forming lactic acid and energy, while in plants we form ethanol, carbon dioxide, and energy. I repeat, in animals, glucose is broken down in absence of oxygen, forming lactic acid and energy, which lactic acid is not good to the muscles if it accumulates. Later we shall see how it is dealt with. But in plants, glucose is broken down in absence of oxygen, forming carbon dioxide, ethanol, and energy.